We're here today talking to Kellen Blair, who is a New York-based musical theater writer, whose biggest claim to fame at the moment is the show Murder for Two, which has not only been produced off-Broadway, but in so many places around the globe. We'll have to ask Kellen to explain it all to us. But I want to get started, Kellen, by going right back to the very beginning and asking you, because when I first met you, you were just finishing up film school at Chapman, and we're considering a career change, and that's how you came to us. Can you tell us about that moment, what made you come to us, and how things progressed from there?
Yeah, definitely. I was in film school, and growing up, I always knew I wanted to be a film director. I only listened to musical theater. I loved musical theater, but for some reason, that in my mind was like not a realistic career goal. But for some reason, film was a realistic career goal. So I decided to go to film school. And my senior project in film school was a short movie musical. And as I was working on that, there was really this aha moment when I wrote the scripts, I wrote all the lyrics for it, and then I had so much fun doing that, and I was like done. And then I was like, oh God, now I have to actually make this this thing, and I had to gather up the actors and actually produce the movie. But it was really, really evident that the most fun I had was writing the lyrics for it, and not only the most fun I had, but actually the part that I felt like I was actually good at. I mean, I don't know. In theory, I like directing actors, but I really don't know what to say to them. I have a hard time putting what's in my mind, conveying it to them. So there I was with a BFA in film production, and sort of this revelation that what I actually wanted to do was pursue lyric writing and musical theater writing. So I got a job in LA, and I continued to work in TV for a couple of years, but I definitely was sort of changing gears. And so I was looking up opportunities. What could I do in musical theater in LA? And this place called the Academy for New Musical Theater kept popping up in my internet searches. And it seemed like exactly the kind of thing I was looking for, which is this structured place where I could go week after week and meet and work with like-minded people. And even more than that, really learn the craft of this thing that I had sort of this love for and this really passion for, but I really didn't know much about. And so I think actually before I started taking the general workshop with you guys, or the core curriculum,
yeah.
I did some of the summer lyric labs with Scott Guy.
Right.
And I have to say,
the lyric lab is a prerequisite for the core curriculum, but you can take it ahead of time if you want to. So that's what you did. You came in the summer and took it as before you started the core.
Exactly, and it kind of blew my mind. I kind of didn't know that you could actually teach and learn lyric writing to that extent. I mean, to this day, I'm not aware of a lyric writing class that gets that much into the nitty gritty of the actual craft of writing lyrics and just. I remember we spent several 2 or 3 lectures on just different kinds of rhymes and what rhymes are. So I know there's a lot of workshops, and I've done BMI, which I bet we'll talk about later. But even that is you bring in a song and here's our feedback on the song. But this was definitely the only time I've ever encountered these structured lessons on the craft of musical theater writing. So
yeah,
it really
the lyric lab, just to describe a little, is very intensive and has many units that go into detail on rhyme, scansion, substitution, progression, alliteration, and really as you say, gets into the nitty gritty of the toolbox that you need to then become a good lyricist.
I still reference some of those handouts. I mean, this is 10 years later, and when I'm stuck on a song, I'll go back to those progression worksheets. And it's like, okay, is this a pronoun progression? Is this question answer? Is this worldview? I mean, that is probably one of the most helpful tools for just approaching the blank page that I think I've ever had.
Well, that's fantastic. Scott will be very happy to hear that because he worked hard on that lab, and I agree. I think it's really useful. So you took the lyric lab, and then you joined us for the core curriculum. And how was that experience?
Right. That was great. I mean, that was exactly what I needed. I mean, musical theater the pro and con is that it's a collaborative medium. A pro because you get to work with a bunch of wonderful people and you're kind of going through this ride together with somebody. The con is if you're in it alone, it's very hard to get something done. And I'm also not. I think I have sort of a instinct for music, but I don't play an instrument. And anytime I come up with a mock melody in my head, if I'm ever writing some lyrics first, it's always very basic. Oftentimes it's the exact same mock melody over and over again. So I didn't know any composers. I didn't have that base of people that wanted to do the same thing. So that's what the core curriculum kind of offered, is you're in the room with a bunch of people that everybody's sort of coming at it at a different point in their life, but they want to go on this journey of meeting collaborators and working on musical theater. So it's great. I mean, it's sort of like speed dating for musical theater writers to a certain extent. You get thrown into this crazy journey of getting matched up with somebody, given an assignment, and you got to come back in a few weeks with a song. And so it's great. I got to work with a lot of fantastic composers and found some people that I really, really enjoyed writing with. I kind of got to sort of hone the skills that I learned and talked about at the Lyric Labs over the summer, kind of in practice, actually writing these real songs over the course of the year. So it was great.
Right. And Kellen, I know that because we team you up with different writers every month, you get a lot of different experiences, and we, without naming names, we can honestly say that some of those experiences are going to be good and some of them are not, but we'd like to think that even the ones where you have a difficult collaboration for whatever reason are also really useful as a learning tool. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the great thing about a place like the core curriculum at New Musicals Inc., A&MT, as I remember it from the back of the day, and BMI, is that if nothing else, you're going to learn how to collaborate, and you're going to learn what it means to be a good collaborator. And one of the things I feel like I learned very early on is you kind of go into those experiences thinking that if somebody is very nice and if they're very talented, then it's going to be a good collaboration. But you realize very quickly that there's so many more little things that go into it than that. You can get along and you can admire their music, but if they are always music first and you are always lyrics first, well, then that might be difficult. For me, I even noticed that I've sort of become mostly music first in terms of collaborating, but I've noticed that the way that a composer gets me their music makes a huge difference in terms of how the collaboration is going to work. When composers get me a melody in a MIDI file or something, I find that I just sit there and listen to it over and over again and stare at a page for days and have no ideas. But when a composer is at the piano and they're playing the piano, and even if it's the crappiest recording in the world, and they're going ba 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 ba, whatever, just la 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 in the actual melody, I need that, because then I can hear the human quality to it. I can hear, oh, there's a joke here. Oh no, this part gets a little bit more serious. I need that. I have a hard time when it's, and other people prefer, really polished MIDI files, and that's great, but I need sort of that humanity to the music to be able to get to that place of decoding the map of what these lines are supposed to actually be filled with content on.
Yeah, that's one of the things I feel about multiple collaborations. One of the best things it can teach you is it teaches you what you need. Because by working with different people in different ways, you'll say, oh, how come that was easier than it was, or how come that's suddenly hard when before it was easy? And you start to learn exactly what you need in terms of the personality of the other person, and whether it's lyrics first or music first, or whether you need to be in the same room or you need to be separate. And the more you can learn about what you need, the easier it's going to be for you to find the person that's going to match up that way for you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's another big one. Every now and then there'll be somebody I really, love and respect, and they're really nice, but they really want to do everything in the same room. And I'm very much of I need to take it away and lock myself in my apartment, and just I just totally freeze up when there's this person, staring at me waiting for the line. It's
And
definitely
I
valuable
would say
to try out a bunch of different people.
yeah, and the important thing to learn is that there isn't a right way or a wrong way, but you do figure out what works for you personally, and you're going to look for someone who can work the way you do. It doesn't mean that you're right, they're wrong, or vice versa. It just means you need to find the right fit. So you went through lots of different collaborations, and then at the end of the core curriculum, the final assignment is always the 15-minute musical, where we team you up the last time with a team, and then give you some parameters and send you off to write a 15-minute musical. And Kellen, I recall that when you were going through that process, you brought in some of your film training and offered to us to make a documentary of the process that you were going to be going through with your team for the 15-minute musical. So not only did you write a 15-minute musical, but you also recorded and then edited and put together a documentary on the experience. So you got a double whammy there. But can you talk about what that experience was like of your 15-minute musical at our core curriculum?
Yeah, that was, I was just thinking about that documentary. I haven't watched it for a few years, but I'm going to go search for it after this because that was really fun.
It's on our YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll check it out. I remember, it's so funny you mentioned that because I had all of these really ambitious ideas for that documentary that I was going to chronicle like every step of every person like in the class, like working on their musical. And then about halfway through, it was very clear, like, what was I thinking? Like, I am tied to my computer working on my musical. I got like 2 days to finish this thing. Like, what am I thinking that I'm going to be able to go to everybody else's? So it did pretty much just become my project's creation of our musical.
There were that year there were 7 musicals happening, weren't there? It was
a
busy
pretty big
year. Busy year, yeah.
And it was an exciting year too because Jeff Marks was joining our class for the end of the year, and he presented a musical. So it definitely felt like it was a high stakes year in terms of wanting to produce quality material, because it was also going to be performed at this huge theater in LA, the Colony Theater, and it was definitely the first time I've ever had something up in front of an audience. So it felt very high stakes for me. And I had a full-time job that I had to get a couple days off of, especially those early days, because there's really just no other way to do it. I don't know if this has changed over the years, but I know, you announce the theme and the various, aspects of it that you need to use. And then I think like the outlines due like the next morning or the next afternoon.
24 hours later, basically, yes.
Yeah, 24 hours later. So we went to that first meeting and there was, a ton of energy in the air. And then we went to a nearby diner and I think we were up till 2 or 3 a.m. Just brainstorming ideas, and we just, we could not part ways until we had come up with our idea because there was just no other option. I think actually the great thing about that is up until then we had I think a month or so between songwriting deadlines.
Yes, a month.
And
that's right.
For someone like me who had really never written much before that, I'd written this short movie that I made in school, but I had not written a ton of songs at that point. I had no idea if I could even write a song in a month. That felt very high stakes to me very quick. And then to suddenly, we've got to turn something in tomorrow. I think it was one of the first times I realized that, how important deadlines are, even when they're crazy deadlines. There's something in all of us, I think, that like clicks in when we have no other choice. You know what I mean? And it's so
motivating.
Easy to go home and just do nothing and watch TV or even like try to work, stare at the computer, But the moment somebody says it has to be in tomorrow, something clicks and you just do it because you can't not do it. And it seems pretty universal that everybody, is in the class was able to do that.
Yeah, I think most people go in thinking they can't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think most people go in thinking it's not possible, but then they manage to do it. And if nothing else, it teaches you that and takes that level of fear away from you in the future of worrying that you might not be able to do it. So your 15-minute musical got written. You got, as our process usually is, you got a draft, and then you had a quick reading of that draft and feedback, and then a revision, and the same thing with the second draft, and it was the third draft that went into rehearsal. How all of that happened very quickly. You only had a couple weeks for each draft to respond to the feedback. But how was that working with those kinds of deadlines and having to get feedback from so many different people and then incorporate all of that into a revision?
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the whole thing feels like a blur. Thinking back, and I mean, I remember there were a ton of late nights at, one of our apartments. I think we even took a trip up to like Palm Springs because we realized we needed to be in the same room.
I think that's in the documentary that you were, in Palm Springs for a while.
I think we were in Palm Springs for a couple of days because we just realized we needed to just be in the same room for like a few days nonstop and just kind of crank it out in like a beautiful setting. I mean, the feedback you get is incredible. I mean, I remember watching we were so proud to, get everything together for that first reading of, going through, and then suddenly we're getting this nitty gritty, feedback, and there was part of me that's like, we wrote this in like a week, right? But it was also, exactly what we needed to hear. There was no way to be lazy because we knew we wouldn't get away with it. I don't know. There's that one of my favorites Oscar Hammerstein stories is one day he was riding on a plane and he looks down and sees the top of the Statue of Liberty, and he remembers just like marveling at the fact that it was like this perfectly round head, because back when they made it, there's no way they could have thought that there would have been airplanes. There's no way they could have thought that anyone would have ever seen that they had taken the time to make that perfectly round head. And yet here we are, looking at the top of it, and it's perfectly round, and that really was a lesson for him in terms of musical theater writing, that you never know who's going to go back and look. Don't let yourself get away with anything, because it's that small attention to detail that's going to set you apart. And I think definitely that experience instilled that attitude in us, sort of through fear, but it's still that I don't remember the lyric exactly, but there was a line that gets cut off. It's like setting up a rhyme and then it gets cut off. Mm-hmm. And I remember I didn't take the time to figure out what it would have been or how it would have rhymed, because it gets cut off and it doesn't matter. And I remember getting called out on that like, we need to know what it, like what was that line, how is it going to rhyme? And I was like, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, but he doesn't know he's going to cut out. He should know what he's about to say. And I was like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's those small little things that that someone's going to notice, and it's going to maybe make the difference. So.
Well, I think you wrote a very successful 15-minute musical that was sort of a twist on the tale of Cain and Abel, and was just a lot of fun. And your cast had a lot of fun with it, and it was a big hit at our big show at the Colony Theater with sold-out houses for both performances. After that, Kellen, you went on. It'd be easy to just say you went on to BMI, you found your dream collaborator, you wrote a show, and you opened off Broadway. But I imagine the story's a little longer than that. Can you talk to us about what took you to BMI and how you and Joe linked up, and how Murder for Two got started?
Sure. Yeah. I think ever since I graduated from film school with sort of that revelation that I wanted to write musical theater, I think in the back of my head I knew I wanted to move to New York at some point. It was just a matter of when. And I was actually working for a director at the time, who I was his personal assistant, but he'd actually been a lyricist back in the day, and he had gone to BMI. He was actually one of Layman Engel's last classes that Layman Engel actually taught. And he one day was just very encouraging about move to New York, at least for a year or two, take BMI, see if you like it, see who you meet. I had really loved a lot of the people that I met and was collaborating with at A&MT, but I did not feel like I had met my collaborative soulmate, so to speak, yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm not from LA, so I didn't really have roots there. So I had no reason to not give it a shot. So I moved to New York actually before even finding out if I got into BMI. It's sort of difficult the way it works. I mean, you go in for your audition and then you find out and class starts like a week or so later.
And you're
so if you're not,
and you have to be in New York once the class starts, so you have to be ready to move.
You got to be in New York, exactly. So unless I was going to completely do everything that week, you kind of have to make the decision to move there. And I wanted to try it anyway. I had friends that lived there, and I thought, if I don't get into BMI, I'll just go to a lot of events and try to meet some people on my own. But I was lucky; I did get in that year, and it's very much like the core curriculum in terms of there's these assignments that have been assignments for as long as anyone can remember. I think every musical theater writer you could talk to has their Blanche song that they wrote.
Do they still do Blanche, and they still do the same assignments that Lehman set up all those years ago?
There are some that they have not touched. I mean, the Blanche assignment is like sacred, so they still do that.
We update ours every few years, and we made a conscious effort to try and make sure that all of ours were from plays that had been written not earlier than the year 2000, and we'll probably do another big update in a couple of years, just to keep things a little more contemporary.
Yeah, that's cool. They update some of their assignments, but not all. I mean, I know the Blanche stayed the same. Actually, Joe Kanosian, who I wrote Murder for Two with, we met because we got assigned to do a charm song for It's a Wonderful Life. And I think It's a Wonderful Life has been an assignment there for many years. I know their comedy song assignment gets changed every couple of years. We had to write one for Angels in America, which at first we were all shocked by, but it is a very funny play.
Absolutely.
And there's like a librettist collaboration assignment that gets changed every year. So it's sort of a mix of old and new. And it's very similar in terms of the whole speed dating thing. You just get randomly paired up with a bunch of people over the course of the year. It ends with writing they call it a 10-minute musical that can be no longer than 15 minutes.
And did you write your final project with Joe at that point?
No, so at that point we had no say on who we were matched up with that entire first year. So Joe and I were actually, even though we wrote our third song together, we then had to continue the year working with a bunch of other people, which was great. I mean, I actually still every now and then work with some of those people that I worked on later projects with. But we were definitely the first two to realize that something special was going on when we were writing together. I think we're very lucky in a lot of ways. I think we were lucky that we got It's a Wonderful Life because we both had this affinity for old movies. He had gone to film school too, so we were both film buffs. And the fact that it was a charm song assignment, and that's, we love the just silly up-tempo stuff, even though technically we failed the assignment because we ended up actually having to write two songs for it, because the first song they said had too much tension in it. The whole point of a charm song is that it's a break from all of the tension. So it's kind of funny. I mean, it's a little bit of an antiquated assignment in that sense, because I think it would be totally fine by today's standards to have a show in which all of the songs did some work. Yeah. But that's okay. It was still educational.
That's also one of the reasons why we've been updating things, because we've found in general that the people's expectations in the theater now have a lot more cynicism than the optimism of the past, and we sort of have to speak to that and realize that, and the humor that comes along with that. But it's a different attitude.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's really smart. But in the grand scheme of things, it was actually good because they made us write a second song, and so then we immediately got to write a second song together and realized that it wasn't a fluke. Like, we actually really have a fun time writing songs together.
Great.
So you're in BMI, you team up. It's kind of like prom. You team up with somebody that you want to work with the entire second year, and so we were the first two to team up and say we're going to do this together. And then
yeah. So do you work on a full-length project in your second year? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so the goal of second year is that you're working on a full-length project. I think very few people actually finish a whole project, but you've got to present 6 or 7 songs from one show over the course of that year. And we decided, we both had read this biography of Carrie Nation called Vessel of Wrath. And she was this temperance leader in the early 1900s who picked up an axe one day and just marched across the United States, smashing bars. They're like parading through the streets and singing songs, parading through the streets and smashing these bars. And because she was a woman and there were manners at the time, nobody would lay a hand on her, nobody would stop her. So it was kind of this weird, fluky way that she made a big splash. And we thought she was a good larger than life character, sort of an Mama Rose, Annie Oakley sort of character. And it was a huge show, huge cast, huge orchestra, and we very quickly realized that right now, especially this is also 2008, 2009. Right now, this economy, as complete unknowns, there is no way that we are going to get anybody to take a chance on this gigantic show from 2 people that you've never heard of. So we kept working on that in BMI, but then as sort of a side project just for us, started working on Murder for Two. And the thought of that,
right.
What was that?
With a cast of 2.
With a cast of 2. I mean, it really was, my day job at the time was I was passing out flyers for half-price tickets to do the 39 Steps at the time. And Joe and I were both huge fans of that show, and especially this concept of like, how can we make a big show out of nothing? How can we make this really cool theatrical experience with as little as possible? And the fact that it was like, sometimes you see these huge Broadway shows and you're just like, why? It's fine, but why is this theater? There's nothing theatrical about it, And so just the very nature of just the theatricality of it, like this, it would not be impressive in any room except sitting here in this theater. Really talked to us. And Joe is also an actor, and Joe was actually supposed to be in a big new musical that was going to open in California, and they actually canceled their production and replaced it with 39 Steps. So we started seeing all of these, it's like, okay, this seems like a small show would be, a much, more easy to produce thing, at least right now. And so, yeah, we kind of made a list of like 10 ideas, and I think like 7th down was a murder mystery where one actor plays the detective, one actor plays the suspects, and they both play the piano. And it was also our first show. It would have been my first full-length show ever. Joe had written a couple other by himself, but it was our first show together, and we liked the idea of writing something that, like a murder mystery, has sort of an inherent structure to it. You're going to meet the detective, each of the suspects are going to have their moment, and then it's going to be resolved. So since we weren't adapting something, it was nice to think that there were sort of those guideposts along the way in terms of the and yeah, actually, we got connected with our first commercial producer because Scott Guy of A&MT fame invited me to the NAMS festival that was going on in New York.
Right, the National Alliance for Musical Theater that has a conference and a festival every October, and we always head out because we're members. So Scott connected with you since you were in New York and invited you to come as our guest to experience the festival.
And that was great. I mean, that was also my first month or 2 in New York too. So I also didn't know anybody. I hadn't seen a lot. So that was a really cool experience to suddenly be at this very insidery, ground floor thing that was going on. And I know everybody was racing because there's 5 shows going on at once. Everybody's racing from theater to theater. And at one point I saw Scott and he grabbed my hand and he grabbed this producer's hand and we put our hands together and said, "You guys should get coffee." And then he ran off to some other show. And so it was sort of prophetic. We did get coffee, and he
was that Jason? Was that Jason?
That was Jason.
Jason Raitt.
That's right. And he was kind of the only producer I knew in the town. Again, I'd only been here a few months. And so we were going to do a reading of Murder for Two, and we had a lot of our, loud laughing friends coming, but no real industry people coming. So I invited Jason, and I think he kept trying to weasel out of coming. I'm sure he gets invited to a lot of, but we were very aggressive, and we kept changing the time by like 15 minutes, so it fit perfectly into his schedule. He finally agreed to come. And then, that really kind of set the show on its developmental journey.
And was it Jason to help you get teamed up with Chicago Shakespeare? Where you had your world premiere, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So what Jason did, which was incredibly smart, I don't know how much of this I should reveal because it's a little sneaky, but I'll go ahead and reveal it. Why not? It's years have passed. So we worked with Jason on the show a little bit throughout the course of that next year. He scheduled a reading or two for us. And then I think he was either working with NAMT at the time, or he was somehow involved with NAMT. He scheduled a reading of Murder for Two at the place that NAMT is held, at New World Stages, during NAMT, and basically just filed all of these theaters that were there for NAMT into our reading, and I think everybody thought it was a part of NAMT. It wasn't. It just happened to be the exact same place at the exact same time.
That's not necessarily so sneaky. There almost every year there's somebody who tries to take advantage. They can't always get into the same theater complex, but they often try to get into the same timing and work it in such a way that people who are already there anyway can come and see another show. So it's
incredibly smart. It's incredibly smart. We were, very. We certainly weren't arguing with this approach of his. And I think because he was involved with NAMT too, he knew a lot of these people, and so he was able to reach out to them. I think actually Jonathan Sparks might have been at that.
Very possibly.
I vaguely remember hearing from him afterwards.
Yeah.
But so we did this. This was October of 2009. And then every developmental production we had up until then, so everything between that and actually coming to Off-Broadway came from somebody that was sitting in that room that night.
Wow.
So we went to Adirondack Theater Festival for our kind of first full developmental production. We went to 42nd Street Moon to work on the show a little bit more. And then, yes, the official world premiere was in Chicago Shakespeare. All three of those theaters were there that night and did it. So Jason was really smart because he planned this one good reading and then kind of got to just let it do its thing.
So after your world premiere in Chicago, how swiftly did the other productions come, and what's been going on, or how quickly did it get to Off-Broadway from there?
So, I have to look back now in hindsight and realize that it was very quickly. It felt like forever, as the person who had this one show and really wanted it to be New York. And we were actually told all along the way that it very likely would never come to New York. Mm-hmm. That we might hit a bunch of regional theaters and have a nice ride, but that it might not be a New York show. But luckily, and it's another kind of coincidence. I hate the lesson being that sometimes these things are coincidence, but I guess it's a mix of being in the right place at the right time with the right thing, but also it is kind of, there are certain moments of luck that either just work your way or don't work your way. The assistant to the sound designer in Chicago, his mom is a very, very successful Broadway producer. And so this was another one of the situations that she kind of got dragged to the show that, her son was working on. And she sat there and apparently thought that it would work in New York. So she joined the team and she brought it to New York.
And who was that?
So that was Barbara Whitman.
Okay.
Who you may have seen accept the Tony Award for Fun Home last year. And she is fantastic. She is just a really, really great producer. Anybody that has a chance to work with her definitely should.
So she shepherded the show then. She was able to move it to Off-Broadway.
Exactly. So the original plan was, I'm trying to think about how long it took. It ran for about 7 months in Chicago. So from closing in Chicago in November of 2011, I think, and then it opened in New York summer of 2013. So a little under 2 years. Part of what took so long is before they decided to open off Broadway, they were very briefly playing with the idea of seeing if a star would want to be in it and opening on Broadway. And Joe and I were always a little skeptical of that idea because it just feels to us like an off-Broadway show. Mm-hmm. You know, it kind of feels, I mean, like, of course, we're not going to turn down having our show on Broadway, but it kind of feels like one of those shows that would have, you know, a good couple of weeks on Broadway or like a year off Broadway. And so we feel very, actually like the right thing happened, which is, I think everybody was sort of thought that there would be more celebrities that were really good piano players that were interested, and a lot of the people, I won't name names, but a lot of the people on the various lists that they were looking at were like, could play the piano, but these were very difficult piano parts that Joe had written, and got way too nervous about the idea of being out there night after night and needing to act and play 13 characters and the piano flawlessly.
Yes.
So then we opened at Second Stage Uptown in summer of 2013, and that was a limited engagement. I think that was 5 or 6 weeks, and we were all just kind of hoping something else would happen, and then we got the phone call that they were going to transfer a commercial production of the show to New World Stages, and we were there till the following June.
Mm-hmm. I saw it. I don't think I saw it at World Stages, so I must have seen it when it was at the other theater. But I definitely, I got a chance to see Joe do the role, and he is, absolutely amazing. And I think it was Brett Ryback, perhaps, that was the other person when I saw it. Is that?
Brett Ryback was our, if you saw Joe do it, I wonder are you thinking about the Geffen production? Joe and Brett did it at the Geffen.
Maybe that's true. Maybe I did wait till it came out here to LA, because I think I missed it in several places before I finally got to see it.
I think you might have come right between, because if you were here for NAMP that year, you would have been right between when it was at Uptown and New World. So I don't think I had quite opened to New World yet.
Yeah.
Because we had Jeff Blumenkrantz doing the role in New York. I think Joe actually stepped in for a few weeks at the very end of the run.
Well, so that wasn't the end of the story, though. Can you sort of give us a brief whirlwind tour of how many productions in how many countries and languages you've had since then?
Sure, yeah. So after it closed in New York, they immediately decided that they wanted to take it on tour, which is great. So one of the things we had to figure out very quickly is sort of the difference between touring productions and licensed productions, and the producers were very adamant that at least for the start of its life, they wanted to tour it and not license it, because they wanted our production that we had worked on and created to go around and hit a lot of these theaters, and then at that point they would license it out. So for about a year, it was just a tour of our show, and Joe was in most of it. I think a couple other people stepped in. But we had some great experiences. We opened, we went to Pittsburgh CLO. We went to Arizona Theater Company. We were on the main stage of the Old Globe, which was really exciting because we were actually originally supposed to be in their smaller theater, and then kind of at the last minute they decided to put us on the main stage, and we were freaked out because it had never. We were used to like 200 seats, and that was the first time it had ever been in a theater. So we toured for about a year in some fun places, and then they opened it up for licensing. So it's been licensed in various spots over the last year or so, which has been fun. I've gotten a chance to see some interpretations of the production that are totally different from what we put up in Off-Broadway. Most recently, I got to go see it at the Fifth Avenue and the ACT Theater. Seattle did a collaborative, a co-production of it, and it was really cool because it was completely different set, different staging. It was the first time I saw it thought and was just very surprised by the whole production, and like really pleasantly surprised. But yeah, and I would say one of the best things of all is that, yeah, it's given us a fun chance to travel the world to some places that we probably wouldn't have got a chance to go otherwise. It's last summer was in Japan for a few months, and we got to go out to Tokyo for a few days to be a part of that. It was in Shanghai earlier this year, and Joe couldn't make it because Joe was actually doing the show somewhere. But I got to go out and see that. It's played in London on the West End for a couple months earlier this year. It just closed in South Korea. It was just extended for a couple more months in Argentina. So it's been very cool. I mean, we've been incredibly fortunate in terms of the reach that it's had, and the people that have reached out to do it. And it's been very fun to get the, they send the translated scripts for approval. And at first when they said that, we kind of laughed because, I don't speak Mandarin or Japanese, but they send a literal back to English translation with it. So you can just read side by side, exactly what they did.
That's quite an experience.
And it's really a hoot. I mean, it's really a surreal experience because they change certain things, for their cultural references. And,
sure.
But it's been very cool. It's been a ride that has been going on way longer than I think Joe or I ever thought. We wrote a Christmas version of the show that got a production last year, and I think that's gonna have a few more this year. We're in talks of maybe doing a like high school version of the show. It's hard because it would have to be a full cast. Suddenly you've got this show that, no high school's gonna do a 2-person show. So you've got this show that what makes it special is that it's performed by 2 people, suddenly being performed by, 15 people. Jury is out on if that's something that will work, or if we can find a way that it can be done and is still special. But yeah,
it's been an amazing ride, Kellen, and I know that we don't have time now. Maybe we'll find another time because I know that you've written with other collaborators and done other work and got to work with people like Larry Grossman and Dwayne Poole, and I'm sure Joe has other projects, and that the 2 of you have other projects. So this was just the launching pad for you, but it was an amazing one. But I'd love to close this out by asking you if you had an opportunity to give some advice to the writers who are wanting to write the musicals of tomorrow. What kind of advice would you give to them about where you think things are headed, and what you think writers can do to be a part of that, and as they're writing the musicals that we're going to be seeing on stage in the coming years?
Well, two things come to mind very quickly. One thing that was really inspiring for me was being at AMT, getting the chance to meet Jeff Marks, and watching, I'm sure you guys have seen the documentary Show Business.
Yes.
But if you haven't and you're watching this, it's a great documentary to watch.
Yes.
And I remember there's a moment in that Jeff and Bobby Lopez are talking, or at like some coffee shop, and they're talking about just talking until they get that golden idea. And they came up with Avenue Q, and it suddenly felt like the golden idea. And one thing that I feel like I've noticed a lot, sort of my contemporaries and the people I meet, is that everybody's got a musical, and everybody is really, really quick to start working on a musical. And I feel like a lot of times people don't wait until they have that perfect idea. They get an idea, and then they spend 5 years working on it without ever really taking a step back from it and saying, was this the best idea, or was this the first idea? And because there's just a lot of musicals that are perfectly delightful, but you just wonder what makes them special, what is going to make them stand out from a pile of 100 submissions that somebody might get. So yeah, the thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is if you came up with that one idea, you probably could come up with 5 more. So if it's another month, if it's another 2 months, come up with 5 or 6 ideas, and then go back and say, oh no, this is the one. Because I meet so many people that just come up with an idea and start working on it. But there really is that golden idea within you that you will come to if you give yourself, enough time.
Well,
and then
go ahead.
I was going to say the other part
point.
of that is if you can get somebody to give you a deadline, you'll come up with that idea hopefully better. I mean, that's what, classes at New Musicals Inc., classes at BMI, stuff like that is great for. Whatever else you think, you've got these great deadlines. And so Joe and I have realized that that's something we need. And we even, incredibly artificial deadlines. We'll ask a friend if they'll produce a reading of a show, and we'll have them, reserve a space and start inviting people. And then we just need to meet that deadline. So that's something that anybody can do. I mean, anybody can ask a friend to produce a reading. Just reserve a space and invite people.
Great idea.
And that really, I mean, any way you can, because the core curriculum is great, but then you're done with core curriculum. You know what I mean? And you need to find ways of basically setting that up, again and again for yourself.
Well, and I want to just get your last words on one other arena, Kellen, because you mentioned having a great idea, which you did with Murder for Two, and having a collaborator that you can work with really well, which you found in Joe. But I'd like to say also that that a great idea is only as good as its execution. And I think one of the things that I admired the most when I saw Murder for Two, needless to say, I was a little biased, was that I felt that your lyrics in Murder for Two it's a silly, fun, crazy, nutty show. And your lyrics could have been sloppy and silly, and probably you'd still get, some laughs. I don't know if you'd get as much mileage as you did, but your lyrics are easy to hear, they're perfect rhyme, they scan beautifully, they're smart, they're clever, and that all speaks to craft and to the fact that once you've got that good idea, you have to apply the rules of craft to it to make it the very best it can be. And it seems to me like you have, that has stuck with you, that idea of making it the best it can be, and not just, what you wrote today, but the very, very best.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot. I mean, that's stuff I learned in those lyric labs and in the core curriculum. So thanks for instilling that in me. But I think it's very true. I think, why not make it the best it can be? You know what I mean? If it's going to take 10 more minutes to find that perfect rhyme, take that 10 more minutes, because why not? It's going to make that much more of a difference.
Great. So. Good to hear. Well, Kellen, you deserve all the success that you've had, and we'll be watching your career to see what's next. And everybody can check out the documentary from your 15-minute musical and see what you went through. But we really appreciate you sharing all of this with us, and we look forward to what comes from you next. Thanks for chatting with us, and take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kellen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.